back to the Facebook Live for Winter Fire School, the 40th anniversary. We're honored here to have Deputy Chief Frank Viscuso with the town of Kearney, New Jersey. Frank has been in the service more than 26 years. He's written multiple books. If you haven't bought any, you guys need to make sure you go out to and buy some outstanding books on leaderships, and they're definitely well worth your time in reading. So he goes all over the country and does speeches. So make sure you catch Frank Viscuso, Chief. We appreciate it. Again, we are apologizing for being a little late. We were having some technical difficulties here on our end, but I guess that's what happens when you do this live stuff like we are with Facebook. So we appreciate everybody spending the day with us. We've had several hundred people already watch the shows from earlier. So thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chief and let him do his presentation. Thanks, Chief, for doing this.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Tracy, I really appreciate this opportunity. And you can hear me okay, right?
Yes, sir. We got you loud and clear.
Tracy, can you hear me? I'm kidding. I can hear you. We're all good. Listen, I'm excited about this. Thank you again for the opportunity. In about a minute or less, I'm going to actually go into a screen share because I have a presentation that I want to share with everybody. But I want to let you know that I listened to Mike Dugan. I listened to Ron Canterman already. Great talks, just a wealth of wisdom. I think you might have your overfill of us firefighters coming from the Northeast. However, it's just exciting that we're able to do this. So I'm going to actually move into a screen share right now. And then I want to share a little bit about my presentation and what we're going to talk about. And in short, I'm just going to talk about forging a winning culture. And the content from this is just a little bit of content from the new book that I'm working on, which is titled Flashpoint, Forge a Winning Culture. And you may or may not be familiar with my work. To give you a little bit about my background, I'm the author of several books on leadership and team development and customer service. And I've written a tactical book. I've written a novel, and I actually have a children's book coming out soon, which I'm pretty excited about. But I travel around the country and Europe, and I've been really all over the place talking to companies and talking mainly to fire service organizations about forging a winning culture. And what I want to talk about right now is what everybody is talking about, which is this new normal. And everybody's kind of, at least the last few months, is this the way it's always going to be? And this is a new normal and how things are changing. And, it's very interesting in the fire service. If you really think about it and you look at our history, the new normal has been redefined regularly for us. And just think back to the 70s when the new normal for us was EMS. And then in the 80s, it turned into hazmat, and we were focused on that. In the 90s, urban search and rescue and technical rescue, and 2000 terrorist attacks and white powder substances, and followed by active shooters and active violence, and now epidemics, specifically COVID-19. What's 2030 going to be? I don't know. What's interesting is 10 years from now, this might pop up on somebody's Facebook memory, and all of a sudden they may say, we know what 2030 is now. We just didn't know what it was going to be 10 years ago. But that's what I love about the fire service. We figure it out. Even the first few minutes before going live with this, we had a technical issue. And to me, I sit here and I just smile thinking, this is so fire service. You show up, we think we know exactly how it's going to go, piece of cake, bread and butter, cut and dry, and all of a sudden things go wrong and we have to adjust. Adapting is a way of life. Adapting in a fire service has been the way of the fire service since it was introduced. So here's my question for you. What are you doing to help lead your organization during this time? What are you specifically doing? We're here talking about leadership. And I'll tell you, I am very passionate about building successful teams. And a very interesting thing happened to me over the course of these last few months, and specifically 2020. I had a lot of downtime. I'm retired from the fire service. I write books and I write articles and I travel, and all of a sudden I had 45 presentations canceled like that. We started doing some live ones, and now I do these all the time, which is fun. But before this happened, I had a lot of downtime. So for the record, what I did with my downtime is I poured it into my family and just reconnected with the values that I think are so important. It helps you remind yourself that what you have in life right now is what you wanted in life 20 years ago, and to appreciate it. But one of the things I also did is I sat back and started thinking about, why am I so passionate about team building and leadership? Like, where does it come from? I want to be a part of a winning team. And I can trace it all the way back to this photo. What happened with this photo is, this is going back to 1986, my senior year in high school. The year before, I competed on the lightweight 8. And when we were going into the national tournament, we were a pretty competitive team, but we're not a prep school. Kearney, New Jersey, we have a river and it's polluted. We're not a prep school. We're rowing against all these prep schools where it seems like they've been rowing since they've been 10 years old, when we're picking it up when we're sophomores in high school. And you want to talk about a team sport. Well, here's a team sport. But my junior year, we actually break up into those guys you're looking at that boat, break up into 2 fours. We go down there, and the 4 that I'm on makes it to the national championship heat, and we place 5th in the country. Pretty big accomplishment. We were pretty proud of that. Well, the next year, we were doing real well. We were beating everybody in the state, and we knew we had our hands full when we went out and rowed against these prep schools. But when our head coach told our coach, he says, we're going to go down as 2 fours again. So we're going to break the 8 up. When our coach came to us and talked about us going down as 2 fours instead of the 8, the family that we were, these 8 rowers and the 9th being our coxswain who steers the boat, we said no. We said we would rather go down as an 8 and lose than go down as a 4 and win. Why? Because that was a family that you're looking at in that photo. And speaking of that photo, that was the national qualifying heat right there. If we take top 3, actually top 2 in that heat, we would make the national championship finals again. Not only did we win it, we actually broke the course record. And that boat, although they didn't go on and win a national title, there was no regrets, because we were so excited about everything we did accomplish. Matter of fact, if you look at the very bottom of that banner, we made it into our high school Hall of Fame for championship teams, which is real exciting. And by the way, there's another team on there that my father played on in football, which was really cool for me. There's 3 components that make or break every organization. It's strong leadership, dedicated people, and a winning culture. We felt we had that back then. Since then, I've been chasing that and building that in the business world. I've built it with sales team. I've built it in the fire service. And everywhere I go as a little league baseball coach, I'm focused on building that with my teams now too. Here's the interesting thing about this. Number 1 and 2, define number 3. If you don't have strong leadership, if you don't have dedicated people, you will not have a winning, successful culture. So your focus needs to be on developing leaders and making people commit. And where does it start? Right here. You've heard these words before. Just like we hear strategy and tactics all the time, we hear attitude and effort. Attitude and effort. I talk to the boys that I coach on these baseball teams about attitude and effort all the time. My boys know this. Every day you show up for practice, they're practicing right now. They practiced yesterday. They'll be practicing again tomorrow. And matter of fact, they'll be practicing Sunday morning. And they know this. Every single time they show up for practice, they have to come with the right attitude and give me the best effort. And it's the same thing with us in the fire service. Because it's easy to get complacent, and complacency kills. But here's the thing about attitude and effort. If you don't give me that, if I'm a team leader, and if you don't give me that as a coach, as a deputy chief, as a fire service leader, a business, whatever, if you don't give me that and you belong to my team, here's a saying that my kids have become very familiar with. Do it right or do it twice. We went out to practice a couple times where for an hour and a half, they practiced and they just gave me a really poor effort. And guess what? We extended practice. And I told them, I'm not doing this as a punishment. I'm doing this as a lesson. And I'll tell you how the lesson came full circle. Kids love their iPads, right? My son, who's brilliant in math, one of my boys, he's just brilliant. He can do things in math at his age that I could not and still cannot do to this age. at the age that I am, I mean. And one day, recently, he rushes through a test and gets a poor grade. But because we're virtual now, the teacher calls my wife immediately and says, your son rushed through the test, because I could see how long he was actually on that page. And it wasn't nearly enough time. He was given 20 minutes to take the test. He rushed through it in less than 2. So we called my son in a room and we talked to him and said, well, guess what? Why did he rush through the test? He wanted to get to his iPad and play with his friends. I understand that. He's a kid. But we take the iPad away and we say, now you know what you have to do. You have to do it again. Because if you don't do it right, you do it twice. Well, this needs to be something that we focus on in the fire service too, which is doing it right. Now, that doesn't mean we're not making mistakes. Mistakes happen at every practice. Mistakes happen at every training evolution. But let's make the mistakes there so we're not making the mistakes as often on the fire ground. So you need to care enough about your people to hold them accountable. And think about this. When I travel and I talk to people in leadership roles about how to lead teams, I tell them, you want to treat the men and women that you're leading like they are your children. Now, notice I didn't say like they are children, like they are your children. When they're your children, what do? You take care of them. You nurture them. You prepare them. You want to give them the tools, the resources, the training, everything they need to support, everything they need to succeed. So that's what we're focused on giving them. But by the way, I can give you everything you need to succeed. I can give you all those things, but I can't give you the heart. That's what you need to bring to the table. That being said, I also hold my children accountable when they do things wrong. Why? Because I love them and I want the best for them and I want them to achieve success. And listen, if I'm going to do this when it comes to grades, and if I'm going to do this when it comes to playing a sport like baseball, you bet it's 10 times more important when the stakes are as high as they are in the fire ground. So care enough about your team members to hold them accountable. So we talked about what changes, every 10 years, even, more often than that, things change regularly. Think about your SOPs right now in your organization. If your SOPs are more than 5 years old, there's a good chance that some of them need to be revised. Why? Because listen, technology changes, staffing levels changes, equipment changes, philosophies change. So many things change that our SOPs have to change with it. So we revise them. We're constantly adapting, we're constantly revising. But let me tell you something that will always stay the same. Relationships. Relationships are the foundation for leadership and leading teams. It's the foundation. And I love listening to Mike Dugan. I love listening to Ron Canterman. I took notes. I got notes in front of me that I took from these guys. Ron Canterman talked, who are your number one customers? Your firefighters. That's right. The internal customer service is something we don't talk about enough because there's external and there's internal. And external are those people that dial 911. And when you're walking in to grab a bagel in the morning on your way to work and you're wearing your uniform, you're dealing with a customer. Think about this. If I walk into a hardware store because I need a certain tool and I shop in that hardware store for 15 minutes and they don't have the tool I want and I leave without purchasing anything, was I a customer of that hardware store? Yes. Even though I didn't make a purchase, I was a customer. Well, when you go buy a bagel in the morning in your community, those people are a customer of you. Why? Because if things go wrong, they're dialing 911 and you're showing up. So these relationships that we're trying to form are everywhere. Relationships with our community, and that's our external customer service. Relationship with our members is our internal customer relationship because it all comes back to relationships. So let's talk about it. During hard times, relationships may be tested. These have been hard times for some people. So consider the tough decisions your community members must make. Have you ever had an interaction with somebody who is angry because you broke their windows at a fire? I get that. They don't understand why. They don't understand the reason why. You do and I do. So we need to take the time to talk to them and explain them. I know how you feel. I would have felt the same way, but let me explain why we had to do this. Have these conversations with people. And for the record, you and I know most of the interaction you have with people is going to be positive. People tend to love the fire service. Let's not blow that, by the way. by being the generation that goes on social media and does it wrong. Because all that it's going to take is a few people to do things the wrong way to make us not respected the way that we are respected right now. Ron talked about this when he showed that t-shirt, that ridiculous t-shirt, those I fight what you fear t-shirts. Come on, that's not what we're about. We're about taking care of the community, not insulting them. Also consider the personal challenges your team members are encountering. Are they going through tough times? Well, we should know. We should have the finger on the pulse of the people we work around. You should know the names of their children. You should know what's happening in their personal life, especially if you're leading a team. I used to love it when a firefighter would pick up a phone when I would call one of the stations, and I'd have a 1-minute conversation about that firefighter's family. How's your family? How'd your daughter do at her soccer game? Because I want them to know I care about them. People need to know you care. I love this saying. You've probably seen this posted all over. I had this in my office. I know it's on the walls in Alaska at their training academy. I am not here for me. I'm here for we, and we are here for them. And we can't ever forget why we exist. For them, the world that we live in is full of problem finders. You could see them everywhere. You'll find them everywhere. You see them on social media. They're in your neighborhood. They're everywhere. They're at your kitchen table, sometimes in the fire station. What we need more of is problem solvers. And that's why you exist, to solve problems. And understand this. When someone calls us and we respond to their incident to solve their problem, it's no longer their problem. It's ours. Because we've chosen to inherit their problem as our own by the nature of what we do when we put that uniform on. It's our problem. And that's why we need to focus on training and being the best we could so we're capable of solving their problems. Leadership 101. Think about this photo right here. Never walk past kinks. You've heard that your whole career. Look, whose responsibility is it? Is it the pump operators? Of course it is. Is it the firefighter that walks past it and sees it? Yes, it is. It's everybody's responsibility to make sure we don't have that right there. But now let's revise this saying of never walk past kinks to this. Never walk past a problem you can solve. What's the problem? It could be anything. You've seen it. You've probably seen this in the bathroom, right? You've seen this. Somebody leaves this there. That's a problem. Why is that a problem? Because this tells you a lot about that person. Because the same person that did this is the same person that's not going to take care of that tool that busted. What they're going to do is they might just put it right back on the apparatus and say, let somebody else find it. Or they find a problem in the fire station and say, it's not my problem. It is your problem because you found the problem. So let's visit this a little bit deeper. Leadership 101. Identify a problem. They're everywhere. You don't have to go looking for them. They're everywhere. Assemble a team. The beautiful thing about the fire service, we already have the team. So we don't have to go trying to find people that are going to want to solve the problem. We just have to motivate them to want to solve the problem. 3, develop a solution together. It doesn't have to be just your idea. Who here has a better idea? It's not a bad question to ask. And 4, go solve the problem. And if you do those 4 things, guess what? That's what leaders do. 4 simple steps. If there's a 5th step, here's what the 5th step is. Repeat. Now, I've had this discussion with enough people to know that some people say, well, that's ridiculous. I can't solve every problem that I come across. I said, I understand that. But you shouldn't walk past them without acknowledging them. Maybe it's a problem you cannot solve, but you can direct it to somebody who has the capability of solving it. The point is, don't leave it for somebody else. So when we talk about Flashpoint and forging a winning culture, there's 4 stages of team development that I like to compare to the stages of fire: incipient, growth, fully developed, and decay. If you're taking my class tomorrow morning, I'm going to get much deeper into this because we have a 4-hour class tomorrow where we're going to talk about each one of these stages and how to get where we want to get, which is fully developed. You're not in the incipient stage. I can promise you that, because that usually happens in businesses, not the fire service. As a fire, we know what that is. Fire just ignited. We have a fire that just started, but it's small and controllable. The growth stage, we know what that is. Consider your team the fire in this scenario. The growth stage is a pretty good place to be because you're growing, you're creating momentum, but where we want to be is fully developed, like those 8 rowers in that coxswain on that boat that I talked about earlier. That was a fully developed team. And I've had fully developed teams that I've been on, that I've coached, and that I've been a part of, luckily in the fire service. And I can tell you, when you're there, you won't have to wonder. The one place you don't want to be is the decay stage. We'll talk about that momentarily. But to talk about fully developed, here's one thing I want you to take into consideration. Teams fail when one person wants to take all the credit. A fully developed team, everybody has a role and everybody has to fulfill that role. One of my favorite teams, and I like sports analogies. I like the 1980 US hockey team, and I talk about the SEALs in my classes and Disney Corporation and many, but I like talking about this company, this team, the 2015 World Cup women's soccer team. World Cup champions. What a great team, because something happened here that really illustrated what it was all about, in my opinion. Now, I'll share a little backstory with you. Right in the middle, Abby Wambach right there. She was a captain 4 years earlier, considered to be arguably the greatest female soccer player of all time, and certainly the most decorated for the United States. But her coach basically told her, if you come out for the team, you'll probably make it. But let me tell you something, Father Time is undefeated. She lost a little bit of her step, and her coach basically told her, if you make the team, you'll be playing from the bench, meaning coming off for a couple minutes here and there. Well, she made a decision, you know what? Then I will lead from the bench. If that's the role I'm supposed to play, I'm going to lead from the bench. Now, if you can recall, if you watched this back in 2015, you know that, of course, they won the World Cup. Carly Lloyd was the captain of that team. Well, Carly Lloyd scores a hat trick. The third goal was spectacular. Matter of fact, I have a video clip I want to show of you right now, that third goal. She scores from half field. Watch this right now. She has the ball right here. She takes it. Beautiful shot. Goalkeeper was out of position. And there's her third goal. And a 4-0 lead now over Japan. And this is the finals. So they pretty much have it locked up. The clock ticks down a little bit. And what's interesting about this is now, with a few minutes left, they send Abby Wambach on the field to play her last few minutes of international play because she's nearing retirement. Carly Lloyd runs over to her, takes the captain armband off of her arm, and puts it on Abby's arm. Well, moments later, when they win the World Cup, Christy Rampone from New Jersey has the captain armband on her arm. Why? Because Abby took it off of her arm and put it on Christy. And when asked why, she said, because she'll always be my captain. See, teams fail when one person wants to take all the credit. And you have to be good at making sure everybody on your team is receiving the credit that they deserve. How do we reach fully developed? Well, here's some ideas. We need systems in place. What kind of systems are we talking about? Hey, listen, SOPs help us create systems. We need synergy. We need momentum. We need a commitment. That's the biggest one right there, because nothing happens without the commitment. And most importantly, we need the mastery of skills. We don't talk about the word mastery enough. A wrestler masters skills, without question. If you're going to be a top wrestler in the country, I just had a conversation 2 nights ago with Joe Dubuque. Joe Dubuque was a 2-time state champion, a 2-time Division I national champion wrestler. And guess what? He mastered skills. Without it, there's no chance. And that's to win a match. Are we talking about mastering skills in the fire service? Are you talking to your members about mastering skills? Because we have people that have been assigned to ladder companies and engine companies for 10, 15 years. Are they filling a seat? Or are they mastering the skills so they're the best person to have filling that seat? See, here's the thing about mastery of skills. There's no finish line. I had this discussion with someone saying, you can't master skills. You can't perfect a skill. Yes, you can. Kerry Strug scored, perfect vault once. She did it once, but she did it when it counted. Guess what? We need to be on the fire ground as good as we can be. Everybody in that photo right there is doing something and needs to have the skill necessary to perform at a high level, because we don't want to go to the fire scene and realize there that we don't have it. So where does it happen? It happens with training. See, listen, it's not about any single accomplishment. It's about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. That's training. Ultimately, it's your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. You must trust and believe in the process, but you also must learn to love the process. Learn to love the process. Because if we're sitting at that kitchen table that Chief Canterman talked about earlier, and if we're complaining because we have training scheduled for today. I remember one time I showed up at training and guys from another, not from my department, but guys, because we had multiple companies there, but guys from another department were complaining about, well, listen, if it reaches this temperature, we stop training immediately. That's fine. If that's in your contract, that's fine. But these guys wanted it to reach that temperature, where my guys didn't. My guys were excited that they were out there because they were in love with the process at the time. And I hope they still are. The process is great. I love what Mike said earlier on his keynote today. After the fire goes out, the world is right. Isn't that the truth? The fire goes out, everything's good. And everybody goes back to the firehouse. And not that they want a disaster, but that feeling is something special. Like, we showed up, we overcame adversity, we did it together. I think morale is highest right after a fire than any other time because they're busy doing something. Well, if that's true, after the fire goes out, the world is right. If that's true, understand we need to prepare for that moment. Because under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your level of training. We've heard that quote. I've heard a Navy SEAL say that one time. Matter of fact, I've heard a Navy SEAL talk about similarities between special forces and the fire service. And this is what he said. We both fight an enemy that can attack any time during the day or night. We both fight an enemy that can hit us with an unknown size and intensity. And we both fight an enemy that maneuvers rapidly, causing us to have to adapt and rely on teamwork in order to beat. Then he said, why are Navy SEALs so good at their job? And he gave 3 reasons for that. Secret to their success. 1, their selection process. Obviously, you don't just say, I want to be a SEAL, and next thing you know, you're a SEAL. You have to go through the process to become one. 2 is the equipment. You and I know we have the equipment to do the job. But 3, and this is where the rubber meets the road, is the training. The training that they do, real life training. I've told this story before about one of my boys' baseball teams when we lost the game, when we thought we should have won, and we realized it's because we didn't play for the speed of the game. So we changed the way we train. Well, how are you training in the fire service? Are you saying, let's do a search drill right now? So let's move some furniture around and you go right, you go left, find a mannequin, rescue the mannequin, let's go get a cup of coffee. Or are you trying to create a realistic scenario and applying some kind of pressure during that training so we could perform under pressure in the field? Because it happens, let's put it this way, it's real simple. You will play the way you practice. And repetition is the way we get there. Why is repetition so important? Listen, on the days that you have an opportunity to train but choose not to, you're making a terrible decision and a huge mistake. And it will come back to haunt you one day. You have the time, you have the resources, you have the ability. You need to have the passion to do it. Because unused skills fade quickly. And that's true in anything. Anything. But firefighting is built upon a foundation of perishable skills. And if we don't use the skill, we lose the skill. What do people want? What are we doing here? We're leading people, right? If we're talking about leading teams, we're talking about the priority is relationships, and we need to understand how to lead people. Strategy and tactics are not only needed on the fire ground. They're needed when we're dealing with and motivating and managing and leading people to a better place. So let's talk about this. Let's just talk about people in general. What do people want? Think about yourself. What do you want? Well, here's what a lot of people want. People want to be known. They want to know how they're doing, and they want to know that they're making a difference. Well, if you have this philosophy of go in the corner, sit down, shut up, don't do anything until I tell you to do it. Well, guess what? They're going to go in the corner, sit down, shut up, and then not show up anymore, because nobody wants to be in the corner and dealing with that. What they want is to be known. They want to know how they're doing, and they want to know that they're making a difference. And that's our job. Another thing they want is respect. People want respect. Here's an interesting thing about the word respect. Everybody knows respect is earned. I get that. But here's the other part of that we don't say enough. If you don't give respect, you will not get it in return. So it starts with how you treat people. So start by treating people with respect, unless they give you a reason not to. A great friend of mine and a captain that I know very well one time talked to me and said, "Hey, Chief," he says, "Yeah, I made a mistake the other day." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I had a new guy from another group working on my shift, and we were sitting around the kitchen table and we're doing a drill on the radios. And as we're talking about it, this new firefighter from another shift," and when I say new, he wasn't new to the department. He was on the job for 3 years, but he just happened to be working with this officer for the first time. But when they were doing a drill, this firefighter asked a question about the radio. The captain turns to one of his newest firefighters with just a few months on the job and says, "Can you answer that?" The new firefighter answered it. He turned to this other firefighter and said, "You've been on the job for 3 years. They've been on 3 months. How come they know the answer to that and you don't?" And I said, "Ooh." He goes, "Yeah, I know." I said, "So you understand that was wrong?" He goes, I immediately knew I shouldn't have done it that way." So we talked about it. I said, "Why?" He goes, I'm pretty sure I embarrassed him." I said, "Yeah, in front of everybody." I said, "Let me ask you something. What do you think the chances are of that firefighter ever asking you another question again?" He said, "Probably not too good." I said, "Not only that, he'll probably never ask any officer another question again, because nobody likes being minimized. Most people don't mind being criticized when we do it the right way, but nobody likes being minimized." So he had to make that right by having a conversation with that firefighter. But I love the fact that he brought that to me. I didn't hear from someone else. He says, "I made a mistake the other day." And I also love the fact that this officer trains his firefighters right out of the gate to be successful at the job. Now, this officer doesn't wait and say, "You know what, we'll get to that." No, let's do a drill on that right now. He puts the time and the effort in. He teaches them. And he had this great technique where he would say, "Go get me this tool from the apparatus." They'd go get the tool. He'd say, "I don't know what this tool is. I don't work here. What is it? How does it work?" And teach it back to me. And he would have it teach it back to them, because that's how he would find out what they're retaining from what he's teaching them. And based on what he hears, he knows he's either doing a good job and they're doing a great job learning, or there's a breakdown in the system, or maybe they need another drill, but he'll fill in the gap and try to figure out what it is. Well, and guess what? When we had this conversation about what he did wrong, I also reminded him that and what he does right. Another thing people want, empathy. Let's talk about this. People confuse empathy with sympathy. They're not the same thing. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone. "Hey, yeah, I heard about what happened the other day. Yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry about that." No, that's not empathy. Empathy is trying to accurately see things through another person's perspective. That's what empathy is. And I'll tell you something. It's a powerful thing to have. Listen, I love grit. I love firefighters that have grit. But I love even more firefighters who have grit and humility. And along with humility often comes empathy, meaning, number one, you don't know it all. And number two, that person might be having a bad day. Well, let me give you an example. I tell the story in the book about this elderly woman who's sitting in a private little area, reading a book, minding her own business, when a man walks up with his two young kids, and they're in the same area. And the kids start jumping around, being a little bit loud, being crazy, being disruptive. And this woman's getting more and more frustrated to the point where she finally turns and says, "Excuse me, sir, but can you please get control of your kids?" To which the man turns to her and says, "I'm so sorry. It's just that their mother passed away a few weeks ago, and it's the first time I've seen them having a good time, and I didn't have the heart to tell them to sit down and be quiet." Kind of changes the story, doesn't it? Everyone you meet has a story. You just don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But I'll tell you what, everybody's either in a crisis, just got out of a crisis, or heading towards a crisis. And that's true with all of us. And that's not a cynical point of view. Most of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Right now, you're sitting down, listening to this, going, amen to that. Because you either just got out of one or are currently in one right now. And I feel you. But that's what's beautiful about the fire service too. The connection that we have with each other. The amount of calls and emails and texts that I get from people I've never met that said, "I read your book," or maybe took my class and said, "I'm going through this and I need your advice." We have a support system. That's an awesome thing. And when I'm talking about a support system, I'm even saying you want to make progress in your organization. Guess what? Somebody's already accomplished what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe the culture of my organization's bad for training. Hey, you don't need permission to change that. You just need to decide to change that. You don't even need permission to have the best working environment in the country. What you need is to make the decision with the people you work with that that's the environment you're going to create. And you need to get rid of this. When I ask in my classes, how many people in the workplace have drama? Almost every hand in the room goes up. It's very common. Well, you know what drama is? Drama is an indication that your team is not connected to a mission, a vision, and or core values. You're not connected. Everybody's just showing up, doing their own thing. And I get that. But understand, what are we working towards? The teams that I'm coaching are working towards getting to championships. That's what they're working towards. What are you working towards in the fire service? Showing up? You know what? The neighbors across the street are going to show up with their video in hand, videotaping you, by the way, and posting it on YouTube. Or are you training to show up to get the job done? Well, if you're not focused on where you need to go, drama is inevitable. And you'll always have some of it, but you'll have a lot more if you're not focused on getting somewhere. See, let's talk about drama. You become what you feed your mind. Think about this glass. If you're thirsty, and I said, well, this glass is full of dirt and water, but you can have it, it's pretty unlikely you're going to drink it. But what if I told you you cannot pour that water out, but you have to drink it? It's interesting. There's a way around this. Well, let me turn on the faucet, stick that glass right underneath that faucet, and in time, that clean water is going to displace the dirty water, and all of a sudden I have a clean glass of water. And now you'll drink it. Our mind works the same way. Whatever you fill it with is what you get. If you go to work with drama and negativity and self-doubt, if you go to work thinking about how this place stinks and I'm done and I don't want to work anymore at this place, I can't wait till I retire, whatever that may be. If you go to work with that mindset, that's a problem. I used to tell myself, because listen, I'm a human being. I have challenges, concerns, anger, frustration, just like anyone else. And I would catch myself and say, you know what, Frank? Smile. Smile. Because if the Chiefs has a bad day, who else has a bad day? Everybody. What if you fill it with the thought of family and respect and positivity and excitement and enthusiasm for training and doing the things you need to do to become a successful fire service leader? It's your choice. It's your choice. And not only that, it's your responsibility to make sure that the people around you stay on point. It's called interlocking accountability. I hold people accountable when they're around me. Why? Because I love them. If you're around me, it's because I love you. Because I promise you, if you're not around me, it's because I don't love you. And I think you know what I mean by that. You know, we gravitate towards the people we care about. And in the fire service, I'll tell you what, it's worth having a goal, working together, holding people accountable, and charging forward with a mission. So define your goal. What is a fire department's goal? It's easy: to reduce the loss of life and property and protect the weak. That's why we exist. So it's a simple answer, and we know it. We're one team, one mission. Midway Fire District just posted this picture, and I'm going to tell you right now, I got jealous for two reasons. One is I hope to move to Florida someday, and two, I thought I would work for that department in a heartbeat based on this one post. First of all, you need to understand that just a couple of weeks ago, I was speaking down at the conference in Pensacola Beach, and I met some of these guys and actually had lunch with a handful of them. I love their passion. I love what they're about. The post said, our officers meet monthly to communicate regularly and ensure our mission is being met. In January, the fire chief, operations chief, battalion chiefs, and captains met to discuss the 2021 operations vision, short range plan, and received leadership training from our own officers. Leadership training from their own officers. How awesome is that? Big plans for 2021. And this book right here, that the training playbook, I love it. I thought I want to work for this organization because I love that direction. And I have no idea if they're rebuilding a culture or if they're reshaping that culture, if they had a poor culture before, if they always had a successful culture. I have no idea. But what I'm passionate about is building teams. And I love that they're doing it. One team, one mission. We talked about mission statements and vision statements and core values, and I do classes on just those things. And I tell you, we kind of summed it up with my group, Group C. We summed it up in 3 words: courtesy, courage, and commitment. And the discussion was simple. Let's make sure everything we do falls into one of these categories: courtesy towards each other and the community we serve; courage, not just on the fire ground, but being willing to have the courageous communication that's often necessary to lead during difficult times with each other; and then commitment. And I just talked all about that with the accountability and the commitment to each other and the commitment to the community that we serve and the organization that we represent. When Ron was talking about wearing that t-shirt that basically gives a poor image of the fire service because a firefighter thinks it's cool. Listen, when you wear a shirt like that, or when you post that thing on social media that you shouldn't post, stay away from that stuff, by the way. It reflects poorly on all of us. I don't understand, by the way, I just don't understand why anyone would go on social media and criticize another brother or sister firefighter. Maybe it makes them feel good about themselves. Here's my take on it. If you see someone doing something the wrong way, bring it to your station, show it to your members and say, we don't do it this way and here's why. But keep it off social media. It doesn't belong there. You could have the discussion, but you, first of all, don't even know what happened at that incident. Well, what makes you think you're not going to show up in one of those videos one day? Because it happens. But the important thing is that we are one team, the entire fire service, with one mission: reduce the loss of life and property and protect the weak. And we need to make sure we hold each other accountable too. That's one of the things I'm passionate about doing, is reminding you why you exist. And you exist to solve problems. So let's just say you're in a leadership role. You have bars on your collar. That's great, but fancy titles and bars on your collar do not make you a leader. I'm going to give you 10 simple math problems, even ones that I can do. Okay? And I want you to tell me what you see wrong right here. I shouldn't even say that. Just tell me what you see, period. And when you look at these 10 simple equations, it's very easy to figure out 10 plus 1 does not equal 10. It equals 11. But here's the point I want to make. You will work for those people one day. That will tell you the one thing you did wrong without ever telling you By the way, you did 9 things right also. Welcome to life. They exist. They're out there. Don't be that guy or girl when you get to that position. Do you point out the fact that 10 plus 1 is not 10? Of course you do. It's your responsibility to teach them. But if they did 9 right, make sure you teach them that too, so they know what they're doing right. So here's what not to do. See, we take these classes all the time of what to do. What do I do to lead? What do I do? These specific tactics on the fire ground. Great classes, great instructors. I've never been more excited about the fire service with all the great instruction that's happening. But let me teach you what not to do in the leadership role. Don't play favorites. Ron Canterman talked about that in his class, about not playing favorites, because it's obvious when people do it. Don't hold grudges. People make mistakes. Talk it out, move through it, and focus on where you want to go, not where you just came from. Don't micromanage. It's the quickest way to stifle initiative. Another question I ask in my classes, how many people here have worked for a micromanager? 70% of the hands go up in a room. So let me give you some advice if you might fall into that category, like I do, where sometimes you tend to micromanage. 1, manage outcomes, not process, meaning everybody has their own process for reaching an outcome. If it's a safe practice, if it's a realistic solution, if it's an acceptable practice and they're getting the end result you want, that's fine, because that's the goal. So manage the outcomes, yes. Manage the process they do to get to the outcomes, no. Listen, I've typed many books. I have 7 published books, I think, and 8, I have 3 more actually sitting on my computer, not knowing what I'm going to do. 7 or 8 screenplays that I've written. And guess what? I still type with these fingers. The process I do is incorrect. I learned the wrong way. I'm the fastest 3-finger typer you'll ever meet. But that's just the way I learned. It's like if you learn to swing a golf club the wrong way, it sticks with you after 10,000 swings because you never learned the right way. That's how I am. But I've learned to accept it for this reason. I'm pretty fast typing with these fingers. But I know this, if I type too fast, I type faster than my mind works. And the pace that I need to write when I'm writing an article or a book is the exact pace that these fingers give me. It allows me to think, pause, and move forward with that thought. That's the system that works for me. If I ask you to tie a knot and you tie me a knot, the worst thing I do is say, yeah, you tied the right knot, but I don't like the way you tied it. Tie it my way. Now I'm managing your process, not the outcome. 2, let people run in their lanes based on talent, skill, and ability. Everybody has knowledge. Everybody has talent. Everybody has skill, and everybody has ability. Matter of fact, Albert Einstein said, everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it'll live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Let people run in their lanes, and more importantly, get out of the way. Again, think about a sports team, a baseball team. Put your pitcher on a pitcher mound, put your catcher behind the plate, and put your best fielder at shortstop. That's their lane, but let them do their job. 3, delegate to develop your team so you have more people that you can put in these positions that you need on the fire ground when it's necessary. Number 4, don't have unnecessary, unproductive meetings. The world could be full of meetings that stifle the initiative in a whole organization if you do it incorrectly. Meetings should be to the point of why you showed up for that meeting. And the worst thing is when you have a meeting 3 months after a meeting and repeat the same meeting you had 3 months ago without having made any progress. We don't want to end up in that situation. So don't have unnecessary, unproductive meetings, and don't give people busy work. Give them meaningful work to help you reach your goals. So you're not just giving them stuff just to keep them busy. Don't use discipline as a fear tactic. Coach John Wooden, legendary coach of UCLA men's basketball, has this great quote. And by the way, pick up this little book, The Wisdom of Wooden. It's fantastic. But discipline of others isn't punishment. You discipline to help, to improve, to correct, to prevent, not to punish, humiliate, or retaliate. Is discipline necessary? Yes. Is holding people accountable necessary? Absolutely. Is disciplining people to punish them necessary? Well, listen, I don't find value in it. And I'm not talking about when people do things that are illegal immoral, unethical, or when people are insubordinate, those are different ball games we're talking about. We're just talking about using it the wrong way. 7, don't disrespect your team members. This often happens at the kitchen table when that team member is not at work. That's when it happens. And that's when we need to stop. They're not here. Listen, I'm not more concerned about the person who talks about me when I'm not in the room as much as the person who allows it. So just don't allow it to happen. 8, don't create unnecessary stress in a work environment. It's a stressful job to begin with. Do you create stress on the training ground so you can perform under stressful situations? Yes. Do you create unnecessary stress so people are dealing with a burden that they don't need to be dealing with? No, there's no reason for that. A great friend of mine is an Army colonel, and he shared this story with me of how his job is to prepare people to do their job on the battleground in his absence. And how can he do that if he's always micromanaging and always creating unnecessary stress and not creating trust? So he prepares them to do the job they need to do, because if they're successful, he's successful. Here's the good news. You could learn just as much from a bad boss as you can from a good one. You could learn what not to do. See, fancy titles and bars on your collar do not make you a leader. Leadership's determined by the amount of people you inspire, encourage, motivate, improve, and serve. And by the way, if you disagree with that, you're not a leader. You're simply a person with a fancy title or bars on your collar. Fireproof tip: become the officer that you always wanted to work for. And on that note, on the flip side, become the firefighter that your community deserves to have show up. All right, I get it. You're having a bad day. I've been there. I've been there more times than you can imagine, where something happens and it just makes for a bad day. Here's the question I want to ask you. Are you really having a bad day? Or did you just have a bad 10 minutes and you've been dwelling on it for the rest of the day? Don't let a bad 10 minutes fool you into thinking you're having a bad day. Shake it off, focus on solutions. And on that note, don't let one bad day fool you into thinking that you have a bad life. Focus on what we need to do. I love Mike Dugan's talk about why we do what we do when he talked about, why are you a firefighter? I loved it just this morning, and go back on this page and listen to it. Why people work. You know what? There's 6 primary reasons why people work. They work for time, money, security, recognition, to belong to a team, or to make a difference. We know what it means to work for money or security. And that's not a bad thing to take a job for that. But 3 primary motivators for people are recognition, to belong to a team, and to make a difference. Do you belong to a team? Do you make others around you feel like they belong to a team? Are you making a difference? Do you make others feel like they're making a difference? Because if not, we need to focus on that. Mike's whole talk about loving what you do is great. If you love what you do and you're passionate about doing it, you're truly living a good life. Isn't that the truth? Get fired up. Get fired up about what you have your hands on, about the opportunity you have. In most polls in America for the career firefighters on here, you need to know that firefighting is ranked in the top 3 in career satisfaction and top 3 in respect from the public. And that's for career firefighters. For volunteer firefighters, let me tell you something. There's nothing greater you can do than answer the call of people in distress. Get fired up about it. Get excited about it. And understand that the people around you need strong leadership now more than ever during these difficult, uncertain times. That's you. Don't look for someone else to come in and be your shining knight. That's your job, to sit here and focus on where we need to go, how to get there, and being the one to lead that charge. If you think you're too small to make a difference, try going to bed with a mosquito in your room. You're never too small. I sincerely thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this. And I really thank you, Tracy, for giving me this opportunity. And this is going to be a great conference. I know tomorrow I have an opportunity to go much deeper into this topic. I'm excited about that. And I hope some of you can join me for that. And Tracy, I'm going to kick it back to you. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Chief. We appreciate it. We didn't really have any questions on social media other than we had Avillo said, good job. He likes what you're doing and has enjoyed watching you today. So, yeah.
Anthony's, hey, listen, see that another Northeast guy. Anthony's my man.
Yeah. So you all are snowed in. You had nothing better to do. So, yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. Again, another great message. Thanks a lot. People, you can still let us know, and we can try to get you into Frank's class, the Chief's class over the tomorrow morning. Looking forward to it. I'm actually one of the facilitators for that class, so I'm excited and ready to hear you go into greater detail with this program.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to that as well. I need
So
to
thank you for being part. I would
What's
say,
that?
and we appreciate you being part of the first time of that we know of in Missouri doing these keynote address live on Facebook. So we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit here and be part of it with us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I wouldn't have missed it.
Yep. All right, Chief. Looking forward to seeing you in the morning.